Welcome back to the Aussie Shed, ladies and gentlemen, and it is great to be back out in the shed. All of my husbandly duties are just about all done. I've earned enough brownie points to get myself back out in the shed, back out working on the Fairlady. As you would have just seen, motor and box is back out of the car. The whole front is stripped back out, everything's off it, everything's out of it, and I'm at the stage of starting to paint the engine bay and, you know, get ready for rebuilding the engine and all that sort of stuff. And I must say, it's a pleasure to be at this point with the vehicle. The last time I was at this stage with the vehicle was when I initially pulled the motor and box out of the car before any real work had been done on it. And at that stage, it was a dirty, filthy, greasy lump. Everything was rooted on the car. Now, at least, you know, so much stuff's been made. All the missing pieces have been sourced, and it's starting to look really good. So what we're working with now is all pretty sweet. Everything's nice and clean. Most of the problems have been fixed with everything, and we've basically got a shed full of parts waiting for reassembly. There is still a few bits and pieces that I need for the motor, which I won't know until I get it apart. For example, a few bits in the engine need to be measured when it's disassembled, so I can't order parts for that yet. But basically, that's not sort of too big a deal. I have most of the major components, and that's looking pretty good. So what I'll do, I'll probably wrap the motor and box up together like that on the lifting table, put it to one side, and then we'll move into the engine bay and start prepping that for paintwork. And now that all that stuff's put away, folks, the fun begins. So what I'm about to do, or what I'm in the process of doing, because I've actually already started, as you can see by my hands, is I'm starting to rub down and prep all the engine bay here to get a bit of paint on it. So what I'm doing is I'm feathering out the edges on all the scratches and all that sort of stuff, and areas where I've spot primed, I'm just, you know, feathering out the edges of the spot prime, rubbing the primer down, just trying to get everything really tidy. You can see I've reapplied seam sealer in quite a few areas where the seam sealer had either dried up or broken away. And, you know, just so that when it's all painted, we get a factory style finish on it. So I haven't gone silly with this, and I'm not going to go silly with it. I'm not filling in all the spot weld marks and all that sort of stuff. It's by no means going to be a show engine bay. But what it will be neat and tidy. So all the sins of the last 30 plus years are all going to be gone. You know, it'll just be nice and tidy. The paintwork will be better than it ever was from the factory, because what they do in the engine bays here isn't really decent paintwork, as in it's nowhere near the quality of exterior paint on the vehicle. It's very, very thin. There's almost, if no clear coat on it. It's kind of like it's a mixture of a little bit of base coat and a little bit of clear or something. Like, it's really, really thin. And you've only got to touch it with a bit of wax and grease remover or some acetone, and it goes all the way. It just disappears down to the primer. It's pretty horrible stuff, really. So, like I say, a lot of work, a lot of sanding, and then primer, and, you know, the process continues from there. Get it all primed, rub it all down again, and then start putting some paint on it. I have decided what I'm going to do with the paintwork, and I've got flip-flopped many times, gone backwards and forwards with different colours, and basically I think what I'm going to do is stick to the factory colour that's on the compliance plate, the factory exterior colour, and redo the engine bay in this silver that's on the car, just because I've kind of grown to like it, and you know, it's one more thing I can keep kind of original on the vehicle. Other than doing all this, there's another big thing that I have to do, and that is to actually sort the Aussie shed out for spray painting, because I have so much stuff on the shelves in here and so much equipment that if I'm going to paint in here, I don't want everything ending up covered in paint. So what I've got to do is I'm going to fix plastic sheeting down off the roof, down over all the cupboards, wrap it right around the building on the inside with little ways in and ways out everywhere, so I can turn it into the Aussie spray booth. That will give me a clean enough area without getting crap all over my tools, and it should allow me to get a pretty decent finish on the paintwork in the engine bay. And plus, it means I'll be able to do all the priming here and rubbing down and priming and rubbing down, and a lot of the bodywork and stuff that needs to be done, because it will be going out to get painted in a booth by a professional. But as I say, I will be doing a lot of the body work myself, just to speed the process up for them and save myself some money and all that sort of stuff. Like, you know, if you're able to do that sort of stuff, guys, as I always say, whatever you can do yourself, do it yourself. Whatever you can teach yourself to do, whatever people, you know, whatever you can ask your mates how to do stuff, that's what you've got to do, because to pay people to build cars for you costs an absolute fortune. Anyway, I'll carry on. Sanding. I might throw in a bit of footage of sanding, but, you know, who wants to see that sort of stuff? But I'll come back when I've got a bit more done, and I've got some plastic sheet fitted up on all these shelves everywhere. Oh, God, there's a light. We don't want to go near that. But we'll see what this looks like. Alright, I'll be back. Just a quick little thing I've come across here, folks, while I've been rubbing all this down. You can see I'm hard at it, getting it all rubbed down. Ready to sort of hit it with some primer. These corners in here, this is the base of the windscreen. If you look in here, you'll notice that the seam sealer in these corners is all dried out and horrid. And you see things like this. And obviously water tracks down in this area. And you can see that stuff like this, that's just loose. You can see it moving around when I poke it. All this kind of stuff here, like it's all just, you know, well and truly all cracked and beyond its use by date. And what will happen is, where this is all cracked, water will track down into those areas and sit in there, and it'll create little pockets of rust, you know. So the idea is, before you get to that situation where things do start to rust, is to just dig out all the seam sealer in these areas and redo it all, which is what I'm about to do now. So I'm going to dig out all this dry crack stuff and redo it. The other side's is exactly the same, possibly not quite as bad as this one. We'll just whip over there and have a quick look. But yeah, basically the same thing. You can see the cracks and everything in here. It's quite a big crack coming down through here. Again, that'll just fill up with water, and water will sit in there, obviously. So best thing to do, we're at this stage, we'll just dig all that out, put some nice fresh stuff in there, and then we'll paint over it, and everything will be fantastic. And that's what it looks like all dug out there, guys. You can see that's a major kind of a join, and excuse me, that bloody hinge fell down. You can see we've got a light little bit of surface rust down in the bottom there, nothing really to speak of. A little bit of surface rust around those alignment positions, I guess you'd probably call them. But all in all, pretty good. So what I'll probably do is just get down in there with a little tiny wire brush, clean it up as best as I can, force a bit of rust converter down in there, just to sort of clean up anything that I can't actually get to. And then I will blast a heap of epoxy primer down in there, and once that all goes off, I'll then seam sealer over the top and then paint properly over the top instead of this sort of half-assed paint work that's on here. Other side, same story really, you know, a little bit of surface rust down in the bottom, no holes, nothing that's any kind of a major problem or any major sort of significance. Again, I'll get in there with a wire brush, put some rust converter down in there, epoxy primer it, re-seam sealer it, and then paint over the top, and it will be all good. But just trying to point out, guys, anything like this that you do come across, now's the time to pay attention to it, as it's obviously somewhere where you don't want water getting trapped and rust starting. Alright. Here we are again, guys, looking at this same piece. You can see that's now been cleaned. That's been stripped back to bare metal using various wire wheels on the die grinder and stuff to sort of get into all the crevices. And then it's had rust converter run right down into this crack and all the way down in through there and around all these bits and pieces. That's been allowed to dry for 24 hours, cleaned up, and now that's had 2 coats of epoxy primer over the top. And I'm about to put some seam sealer over the top of this, same on both sides over there, and then it'll be ready to be re-primed with the rest of the engine bay. You can see here how this is going. Oh, I've also started setting the Aussie shed up for painting. You can see that side there is all fully covered in plastic. And we are starting to get ready for the Aussie paint shed booth thing. Anyway, I'll carry on and I'll be back with an update. And that's that. Repair complete. So we're getting there now, guys. It's all masked up. Shed's all set up for painting. Sort of ready to go for a little bit more primer. This is really just a collection of spot repairs that have been sort of sorted out, and you know, all of those repairs have been overcoated in a single pack epoxy primer, and the whole thing's been rubbed down with 400 wet and dry. So it's pretty good, you know, it's pretty good, it's pretty smooth. So now, after talking to the painter, I'm going to put a couple of coats of 2-pack primer on the whole thing and rub it all down with 800 wet and dry. So it's then ready for him to apply the silver metallic over the top. So I think I might call that it for this video, guys, and I'll finish this video up with a bit of footage of me laying down some 2-pack primer. So hopefully we'll get some paint on this in the next video. Alright folks, so thanks for stopping by the Aussie Shed. Always a bloody pleasure to have you here, and as always, I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.